Mike Ritsema here with Brian Abraham, our Chief Technology Officer, and we're going to talk about 6 questions to ask your IT manager or MSP Technology Provider today, this afternoon. And let's get straight into it and understand that I believe there's 4 things that business owners are interested in from the bottom up. It's innovation. How am I different than the other companies? It's profitability, productivity, and then risk mitigation. Today, we're talking about technology risk and managing technology risk. Technology marches on. It's imperative we deal with it. Cybercrime is growing. It's going to cost over $6 trillion to America by 2021, this year. $103 billion on cybersecurity protection. The average cost of an attack is up to $3 million. 92% of malware is delivered via email. We will talk about layers of security today. We'll talk about a lot of things relative to this, but the landscape has changed. 65%, 2/3 of hackers, victims are small businesses. If you're a small business today, they're coming after you. They're not going after the credit cards anymore. This is big business overseas. We're talking about ransomware as a service. We're talking about the dark web. We're talking about businesses with 100 employees in them targeting our companies and trying to extract big money from us. Anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000 is what we're seeing from small business. And 75 or 70% of SMBs have not identified or documented their cybersecurity threats, and we just have to get to work on it. They are targeting small business. It's where the vulnerability is. And this report from Perch and MSP report, some of you may have heard of the SolarWinds attack and the Kaseya attack recently. The bad actors are targeting companies just like i3, just like any technology provider out there, the tools that they use. So it's imperative. In fact, the blue box there is talking about security threats and trends, and it is that the bad actors are targeting technology providers, and therefore it's up to us to up our game. That's what we're talking today. And the Verizon data breach report of 2021 states that 85% of breaches to small business, and we are one, technology firms are small businesses, involve human elements. Mistakes can be made. 61% of breaches involve credentials. We're going to talk a lot about access control and credentials today. And the foundation of our conversation today and what we're bringing to the market at i3 Business Solutions, our cybersecurity focus is based on the NIST and CIS frameworks. The National Institute of Standards and Technology is a government-based organization, provides standards across all parts of the economy. And in this case, they have created cybersecurity standards and guidelines for federal agencies. The Center for Internet Security takes those standards and creates cybersecurity best practices and CIS controls. It's generally accepted in the technology industry that this is the way you build out, aligning to the CIS and NIST standards is the way you build out your cybersecurity. And that's what we've done at i3. And that's why we're doing this webinar, to express our concern and suggest that you ask your IT manager or your technology provider these 6 questions. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian Abraham, who'll get into the first one.
Yeah, so number 1, 2-factor or multi-factor authentication on all client-facing or information-owning systems. So most people are now aware of what multi-factor authentication is. They have to use it for either bank or financial systems or investment systems. Those usually always require it. we have been recommending it now for quite a while for anything that email related or anything else. As a technology provider, like Mike said, we're a big target. So we have access to a lot of clients. We contain all their documentation. So it's imperative that every system that we or a technology provider use has multi-factor on everything. And that is, your PSA or your ERP, your accounting system, your ticketing system, the remote monitoring and management. So you may have heard about the Kaseya breach. Kaseya is an RMM that had a breach pretty recently that impacted quite a few businesses, and that was a RMM tool that was breached. So having multi-factor authentication on that RMM tool, documentation. So your technology provider is storing all of your passwords, and that needs to be in a very robust system. So we use an industry-leading SOC 2 compliant, audited documentation system that we use to store all of our client information. VPN access to the office network. So most companies have VPN in. VPN should be protected by multi-factor authentication. There's been a number of VPN breaches over the past few years. So whenever somebody's passwords get leaked out onto the dark web, or they run a tool against a vulnerability, if you don't have multi-factor on your VPN, that allows an attacker to gain a foothold on your system. Email, I already mentioned, that's kind of a no-brainer. Anybody who's not running that should turn on multi-factor today. That's very important. And then your BDR, your backup system. So two-factor, separating a credential air gap, separating those backups to prevent those from being breached.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, I'll mention a couple more things here, and that is two-factor authentication. Some of you have heard me say it before, is the ATM machine, right? It's what you know and what you have. You have your ATM card in your hand, and you know your 4-digit code. So somebody steals your card, they do not know your 4 digits. If they figured out your 4 digits, they need your card. And that is the safety of two-factor authentication. In the case of all these systems, two-factor is we log in through the browser or through the software, and then we have to have, what do we have? Our cell phone, and that's where the two-factor 6-digit code comes from. And ask your IT provider, are they running two-factor? Bonus information, Tuesday, I was in 2 meetings. I was in a meeting with about a half a dozen CFOs, asked them how many are running two-factor authentication at their company. Only 2 hands went up. So 4 companies not running two-factor authentication, unacceptable. In the afternoon, we met with 2 other businesses. One of them not running two-factor authentication, never recommended to them. This is a must for your small business, and it's a must for every tool that your IT manager or technology provider is using. So let's go to number 2. Number 2 goes to access control again, right? Login control. Do you have separate admin user login emails for internal systems? I'll quickly be turning this over to Brian Abraham, but basically, should your IT manager or your IT provider be breached and get the password, the login password, to an email address for an engineer, and they can then use that to log into internal systems and take control, that's a big problem. And that is why at i3, admin logins are separate and different from standard email addresses. This is the level of cybersecurity at the access control level recommended by CIS and NIST. It's a step further in securing i3 and our clients. Brian, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just kind of put some context around it. So using Office or email administration as an example, right? A lot of people in an office, we do this for a lot of our clients. Some of our clients have an administrator in their own office that might be responsible for managing emails, creating email accounts, etc. So if that individual is using their regular email account for those administrative permissions, if they get any type of a phishing email or click a bad link, that could give a malicious actor access to their email environment at an administrative level. So you don't want to use your daily driver user account to make administrative changes. That account shouldn't have administrative access. So if you're going to make an administrative change, there should be a separate account that you use to log in. And that just prevents, the common a common small breach from that might affect one person. It prevents that from expanding throughout the entire company.
Beautiful. Number 3, access control again, login and user protection. Brian?
Yeah, so our password storage, right? You don't want your passwords stored in an Excel file. You don't want them stored on the shared drive. And all the passwords need to be different. So the password for your email login, the administrative password for your domain, the password for the wireless, the password for the firewall, the network equipment switches, the backups, all of those should be unique across the environment. And the reason is if one password gets breached, it doesn't allow an attacker to crawl the entire network and take over everything. So your provider should be maintaining those individual passwords, separate unique passwords, and they got to be stored in a very secure way. No homegrown systems on servers in their office, no Google Docs, no Excel files. We're talking about a SOC 2 compliant, audited, controlled access environment. So you can see who has access to passwords. And that's something that, we deal with here when like an I3 employee leaves, for example. Our system allows us to go and view all of the passwords that they have seen, all the passwords that they've used in our system, and we can roll all those passwords. So we can see who's accessed a password and, maintain password integrity.
Yeah, so and then the way that looks for your technology provider and I3, a technology company may be managing 25 firewalls, 50, 100, 200 firewalls. They might be managing 100 servers, 300, 500, 1,000 servers. Every one of those passwords has to be different. And if they're the same, that's a major concern, because should they be breached, that bad actor has access to 100 firewalls or 300 servers. Unacceptable. This is so important for technology providers and IT managers. Number 4, are you running EDR, MDR, or SIEM on all internal endpoints? So at i3 Business Solutions, I say technology marches on and the protection layers continue to improve over time. And EDR, endpoint detection and response, MDR, managed detection and response. And a lot of technology providers and IT managers are living in a protection world. And that is antivirus on the desktop. That is a firewall that's protecting. We put the firewall in 3 years ago, we're good. That is a cloud DNS layer that says, oh, I clicked on what I thought was the FedEx link, took me to a bad site. Wrong, you're not going there. These are protection layers. Patching, I patched my server and my desktop, I'm safe, right? Yeah, I'm protected. But what's not happening is detection and response. Detection being, oh, something changed on my laptop or something changed on my server. And then response, I'm going to look at that and figure it out. This is very expensive to do. But for a financial firm, for a healthcare organization, for an IT company, absolutely. Endpoint detection and response, not oops, we got a virus, we were protected, oops, we got a virus, and 2 months later we find out we've got a virus. Unacceptable. Endpoint detection and response provides immediate response. SIEM, being security incident event management, is a higher level yet of protecting all endpoints. So EDR is a step further than antivirus. It goes to something changed in my configuration. I don't, could be a bot, could be some strange game that was loaded by an employee, but the detection says, I don't know what this thing is. It's not on our whitelist. I'm going to quarantine it. And the response is, it's either a bot or a virus, cream it, or no, it's okay. We've got a specific application to our business that we loaded on our server or desktop. And so release it from quarantine. That's endpoint detection and response, a layer and a level that every technology provider should be running. And depending on the industry you're in, we are recommending it absolutely for our customers also. Comments about that, Brian?
No, yeah, I would say EDR is definitely a recommendation we've been making that has been getting more important depending on the client risk or exposure level. The other thing I would add to EDR, Mike, is that it is behavior based also. So a lot of, if somebody does gain access to a system, let's say they got in through a VPN or something like that, right? So nothing out of the ordinary happened. A user logged into a VPN. Maybe it was a leaked password. So now you have a bad guy on the network. And the first thing they're going to do is try to start either downloading stuff or running tools. And a lot of times the tools that they run are tools that are built right into Windows. They don't have to download anything. They can just open a command prompt, PowerShell, start running commands that will delete your backups, delete your shadow copies, etc. The EDR software will actually detect that behavior as being malicious and shut down that session, log that user out, and send an alert to the security team that says, you got something happening here that needs to be investigated.
Beautiful. That is the next level, and that's what we recommend that every IT manager and technology service firm deliver. It's a requirement. Number 5, Brian.
Incident response plan. Yeah, so if anybody's ever done a disaster recovery plan, they say the reason that you do that is so that you're already going to be in a state of trauma if something happens. You just need to open the book and start reading through what you do next, because you've already thought it out when you had a clear mind and you know exactly what to do. Or in the case of a company we were just talking to, a lot of the officers of the company weren't present when they had an incident, and then other people were trying to figure out what to do. So yeah, incident response plan tells you, what's going to happen. How do you react if you suffer a breach or if one of your clients suffers a breach, right? So your staff are trained on where that plan is, how to act on the plan, and what components go into it. And that includes, your emergency contacts, who do you call, roles and responsibilities, where is data backed up, what protection measures do you have to take, restore methods, and Mike, even something you've been mentioning is when you engage your insurance provider if there's an incident.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so again, it's imperative that your IT manager have a plan like this, or your technology provider. Should the technology provider be breached in any way, they need to know exactly what the sequence is going to be. And should you, their customer, be breached, they need to have the plan, because if the wrong move is made, it can have an impact on any insurance claim. Sequence and a priority to how it's documented and the steps that are executed. So yes, does your IT manager or your IT provider have an incident response plan in place? And number 6, do you have online or offline air-gapped backups of all client-owning data or systems, cloud or on-premise? And so certainly for any technology provider, the ability to recover this information that may be in the cloud, may be on premise, given the breadth of the companies that they're managing, it's just imperative. And air gap to being completely offline. Again, Brian and I were in a company that was using a cloud service, hundreds and hundreds of companies in this cloud service that was fully breached and flattened with ransomware. And basically, they're out of business. The company with hundreds of customers in the cloud is out of business. And their customers are completely devastated, and trying to recover from that. And the answer is they did not have air-gapped backups, and they did not have the ability to recover. It's imperative that every technology provider or IT manager have that in place, and that you ask that of your IT manager or your technology provider to show how they would recover in the case of a breach. Brian, comments on that?
Yeah, the methodology that they recommend using is to assume that you will get a breach, right? So assume that your systems are compromised. What are your plans that mitigate that risk? And yeah, like the example you're talking about, that cloud provider, Mike, we don't know the specifics of what their vulnerabilities and weaknesses were, but clearly they were substantial enough for not only all of their client systems to be wiped out, but their own backups of those systems as well. So yeah, but and again, when you're a technology provider, it's your responsibility to maintain those systems on behalf of your clients. So air-gapped, separated credentials, offline, write-only, different methodologies, but certainly just having the backup on-site or in building is not adequate.
Yep, indeed. So those are the 6, and I3 has been on this journey. I say technology marches on, and so do the security controls. Relative to two-factor authentication, somewhere around 4 years ago, we weren't recommending it. Today, it's number 1 on the list for any security recommendation is two-factor authentication. So our Fortress cybersecurity services, we're rolling it out. We're getting our house in order at i3 Business Solutions and tightening things up. The 6 things we went through, yes, check, done at i3 Business Solutions. We always talk about layers of security. There are layers of security. And is it ever possible to be 100% protected? No. But is there a sequence to the recommendations to secure your organization? Yes, there are. So, action and next steps, multi-factor authentication is a priority and a must. Secondly, ask your IT manager or IT firm the 6 questions and confirm that they're as secure as you need them to be. And then always, I'll be at a customer at noon today in our peripheral. I'm on the east side of the state where we're talking about an assessment. They're using an east side IT provider, and we will be doing an assessment of their technology. Always consider an assessment of your security posture. So that's it. Brian and I are available at these email addresses or phone numbers. Again, technology marches on. Mitigate, your business risk and confirm with your IT manager, IT person, your technology provider that they're as secure as you need them to be.